Good evening, welcome to Last Bell Boxing. Tonight we're joined by matchmaker great Bruce Trampler from Top Rank. Good evening, Bruce.
Good evening.
Thank you for sparing the time to join us. Really appreciate it. You're also joined by Ray, my co-presenter as well. Good evening, Ray.
Hey, how are you? Right.
So, Bruce, I thought we'd start by going back to the beginning. We've done some homework on the young man, and obviously he started off by looking for a career in journalism, and then decided to create a career in boxing. So why did he decide to jump into boxing?
Well, it was a unique opportunity. I went to a boxing match in Columbus, Ohio in 1967, and I wanted to write an article in the college newspaper at Ohio University, and I interviewed a fighter named Bill Douglas, and in the course of talking for an article, he mentioned he didn't have a manager, he was having trouble getting fights. I volunteered to do what I could, even though it was only the second boxing show I'd ever been to. And so we hooked up, Bill Douglas, the fighter, me as the manager. And of course, he later became better known as the father of Buster Douglas. And so it was very fortuitous. It was, almost unbelievable that we would hook up, and that's how it started.
So that must have been quite a steep learning curve supporting Bill Douglas with his career. How did you go about learning what to do?
Yeah, it was a crash course in learning. I Ring magazine, I'd been a fan, and I started reaching out to contacts in the city. Went around. I was acquainted with Teddy Brenner, who was the matchmaker at Madison Square Garden at the time. Just one phone call led to another, one letter written led to another, bonds by mail, and it just kind of grew to the point where in 1971, Douglas and I traveled to London to fight Bunny Sterling over there. So.
Ray?
Yeah, your reputation you've in the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and it's a who's who of you've been a matchmaker. I was just interested to find out in terms of you work with the likes of George Foreman. I mean, how do you manage to get such a big role in helping George Foreman?
Well, working for Top Rank opens a lot of doors for you, and it acquaints you with some of the best fighters in history over the years. So George Foreman, an all-time great heavyweight, but we've dealt with Hall of Fame fighters at every weight class. Well, Bob started in 1966. I started with him near the end of 1980. So that's over 40 years with Top Rank. So you run across, pretty much the best of the best, and right on down to the worst of the worst.
Just touching on George Foreman for a minute, Bruce. I understand you had quite an interesting encounter in a changing room after a fight with Mr. Foreman.
The encounter wasn't with me. I had a couple boxers on the undercard there in 1977 in San Juan, and George, who was trying to get a rematch with Muhammad Ali at the time, fought Jimmy Young, and it didn't go well. And George realized as he came back to the dressing room that he wasn't going to be able to fight Ali again, coming off the loss, and certain thoughts and ideas that he had that were shattered. It triggered a tremendous scene where George lost all control of himself and had a real bad episode there, and everyone did their best to calm him down. I was one of the first to flee the dressing room for my own safety. And it was a scary moment, but it was such an important moment because it began George's transformation from his previous persona to the man he became and is today.
So
go on,
mate. Go on, mate. Sorry.
I was just going to ask you, because you've achieved so much in boxing. What would, for you, if someone was to ask, what would be your proudest achievement in boxing if you had to nail down one?
I never thought of it in terms of a proudest achievement, but there's been a lot of thrilling moments. When George knocked out Moore in his third shot at regaining the heavyweight title, he'd previously lost on points to Holyfield and on points to Tommy Morrison, and he didn't give up. He was determined to win the belt, and the truth is he was losing the fight with Moore. And I was despairing that, what do we do after this fight if he loses again? And then, boom, he dropped the bomb on Moore, and he'd achieved his goal. It was a wonderful moment.
So that leads me on to my question, Bruce. What are obviously you've now matchmaked through a few decades, it's fair to say. What are the biggest challenges in the current era with matchmaking?
In today's era compared to earlier? Well, when it's a different business now. When Top Rank did the Four Kings, Hagler, Leonard, Duran, and Hearns, we had access to all four fighters. We didn't have promotional contracts, but we had access to them. And our promotional rival at the time was Don King, who was handling heavyweights, and Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., and a few other guys. But there was no conflict. There was, he had access to his guys, we had access to our guys. Nowadays, everybody has a promoter that you have to deal with, and each promoter looks out for his best interests. So you can imagine today if Leonard was with one guy and Hearns was with another and Marvin was, it would have been very messy, and that's evidenced by the difficulty today in making fights where certain guys are held by other promotional entities, and that's why some of the biggest fights aren't happening today like they used to.
So does that make, and this is from a British point of view, does that make somebody like Josh Taylor's success becoming undisputed at 140 all the more sweet? The fact that he's had to navigate that when there's only been very, very few, maybe 5 undisputed champions in the modern era. Does that make it all the more sweet for you then?
It does, but Josh Taylor was the beneficiary of fighting a boxer, Jose Ramirez, who we promoted. And Jose was willing to fight Josh, and the fight came together. Had one or the other been with another company, it might not have been so easy. So, and that kind of illustrates what I'm talking about. There's too many promoters with too many fighters, and each one rightfully wants to do the best by their fighter. Our guys, I'm not saying this in a boastful way, but our guys will fight anybody, any champion, and that's just the way it is. It's not reciprocated by other promoters.
So, Bruce, obviously, in terms of I was looking through some of the people that you've matchmake, and it's a ooze of boxing, if I'm honest with you. What would you say the biggest upset you've been involved in directly?
Jeez, I don't know. Can you think of one?
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No. I'm asking Evan for.
I was saying Tommy Morrison, Michael Benton's a big one.
That was, yeah. Evan just reminded me when Tommy Morrison was defending his WBO title, Michael Bent, and boom, we didn't see that coming. But in retrospect, Tommy didn't train as well as he should have for that fight. He thought it was an easy one, and Bent was a danger man. And as they say in the heavyweight division, one punch can change everything. So that was a big upset. But you got any more that you can think of?
That's harder when you put it in this.
Yeah. No, I mean, you guys could probably remind me of some.
Yeah, well, let's try another question then, 'cause it's quite late at night here, Bruce. You put me on the spot there, young man.
Yeah, it's
No.
That was enough.
What about the greatest victory you've been involved in then? Probably too many to recall on, Bruce, but a couple of highlights.
Well, for me personally, I was very close to Johnny Tapia. So when Johnny out his Albuquerque rival, Danny Romero, that was quite a fight. I don't know how big it was internationally, but in the States, and especially in the Western states, that was a big fight. But whenever you have a chance to see a Ray Leonard fight or an Oscar De La Hoya fight or any of these guys, you feel honored and thrilled to be part of it.
Yeah. And what about the atmosphere over in the UK? Because a lot of American and other fighters come across to the UK and they're quite astounded by the atmosphere. What are your thoughts on the UK fight fans' atmosphere in stadiums?
It's incredible. They have the best boxing fans in the world over there. And I say that with a little bit of pride because I'm 25% a Scotsman. So I can relate to my Irish and English brothers. And wonderful fans and terrific fighters, and always has been that way.
So moving on to current affairs then, Bruce, for 1 minute. There's been a couple of articles over in the UK stating that if the likelihood is Josh Taylor will fight Terrence Crawford April, May next year. I'm not asking for any exclusive or anything, but is that realistic?
Probably not. Josh is a real tough guy, and he'll fight anybody. And I think when Josh made those claims, he would fight Terrence Crawford, who's, in my opinion, the best fighter in the world, pound for pound. But that's not Josh's weight class, and he did a wonderful job unifying the titles, and I think he'll stay, at 140 at 10 stone. And Crawford's got his own challenges ahead of him, or defenses ahead of him. But no, there's no question Josh would fight him, either in the ring, on the street, whatever.
Yeah.
But not likely, no.
Typical Scotsman, eh?
And then, obviously, Joshua versus Fury. Again, Arum said that's likely to happen 2022. Boy, do us UK fans want to see that, as I'm sure you can imagine. What's your thoughts on that fight?
Which fight was that?
Sorry, that's Joshua versus Fury, proposed for next year.
It's a fantastic fight. Two very evenly matched guys, and it got thrown. Obviously, we all know what happened with Fury Wild 3. So that's got to be taken care of first. And but I know how Fury feels about fighting AJ, and I'm sure AJ feels that's a really, really competitive fight with a lot of national pride going on involved there. And that's a fight, as a fan, I'd be looking forward to see.
I'd imagine there's a lot to work through as well regarding who's the A side and who's the B side, and there'll be a lot to work through on that fight, won't there?
Oh, there's going to be so many storylines there. There is no A side there. There's two A sides. I should say there's no B side. Two terrific fighters. That's a match made in heaven. obviously, like everyone else, I hope it happens.
Yeah, yeah. And then, Bruce, what's the secret to your vitality and Bob Arum's vitality? Because the energy you guys have got, you know, is second to none. You got Bob Arum jumping around different time zones. You know, what's the secret, Bruce? Give it me. Come on.
Well, I can only speak for Bob Arum. He's not human. He's superhuman. I mean, just this week alone, you know, he turns 90 in December. But just this week alone, he flew to Philadelphia, to New York, back here, thinks nothing of it. And that's what really keeps him going. We all sit around and marvel at him, because when the rest of us get tired at the end of the day, he's just getting started. His interests span not just the time zones in the States, but he's internationally on the phone all day, and he loves it. And that's what keeps him going. He's an amazing man.
And that's also why that top rank is still relevant and is still seen as one of the top boxing promotional outfits to this day. You guys have always been at the top since you came on the scene.
Yeah, he's a real inspiration to us. He doesn't even realize how remarkable he is. He's like the Energizer Bunny, and you know, none of us can keep pace with him. Put it that way. We work in different shifts, so we can keep up with Arum.
Remarkable.
So obviously, Bruce, you're a legend of boxing, but also sports memorabilia is a bit of a passion of yours as well. So what's your prize asset in terms of sports memorabilia?
I value them differently than in terms of money. Baseball players or boxers that I've had the pleasure to meet, the honor to meet, if I have their cards, I have a personal relationship with these great athletes. I collect the cards or the memorabilia, the jerseys, and that means more to me than you could put a price tag on. So.
Yeah. Well, Bruce, we agreed to keep this short, young man. So I'd like to firstly thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. So really appreciate your time. And what we'll do, we'll call it a day now. And hopefully we can have a part two sometime in the future. Because with all due respect, you'll need a few parts to get through your fantastic career. So hopefully we can hook up again in the future and carry on where we picked up, if that's okay.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for all you do for boxing, and I look forward to the next time we meet.
No, thank you for all you do for boxing.
Thank you.
Much appreciated, Bruce. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.